I think, one of the challenges, another challenge like of all this is, and you mentioned it in our what you sent last night. I listened to the video and it was great. Everything you said like hit spot on. I watched it with
Nice.
Devin. I watched it with Devin, and she was like, "Oh my God, this is so you. Have you told him about this?" I was like, "No, I didn't tell him about that." Um, so it was all very accurate, and um, one of the things that I felt like when I started out in all this is I really felt called to a mission, and
Hmm.
like I had been given some great gift here to share with people, and I think putting that message out there over time, I've shifted from that 5D space more into at times a 3D space because I've been trying to use that Trojan horse, as you mentioned, but it makes the messaging sound more generic, more
Yep.
common.
Yep.
And I was listening to what you said last night, and I thought, yeah, like that's what I've been trying to articulate. I have been sort of playing it safe, and it's not clicking for me even.
Yeah.
And I need to speak more to what got me excited about all of this. you know, em- and empowering people to live lives that are more fully expressed, where they're happier and, stepping into their purpose and their destiny, and of all the things that you're offering people as well. I think you're really stepping into your destiny. You're telling people that they have this opportunity, and you're living it, which
Yeah.
is, I think, what this is all about. And,
Yeah.
um,
Yep.
content creation is just a tool, right? We have this platform, we have the internet now, and we can share our thoughts and our feelings and our creativity with the world. And I think it gets a bad name at times because a lot of people use it in a superficial way.
Hmm.
And I think that's fear based. I think that's because most people are living fear based lives, living in that 3D space. And so when you start to use these tools in a way that they have the potential for, I think it becomes a lot more profound, a lot more powerful. And, that's why the message that you're putting out there, the one that I'm trying to put out there, I think will eventually get through to people once they recognize it. I think it's going to take a little time, but I think it's going to start to catch in, the next few years here.
Welcome, Andrew Henderson. Welcome to the Gentle Mastery Podcast. It's really, really great to have you here.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here, Dave. I've been looking forward to it.
That's great. Yeah. Well, so that everybody who's listening and or watching knows, Andrew and I worked together. I was a client of his in his 5-star creator course, and I just can't um, recommend it highly enough. There were major shifts in my business and my understanding of myself in that business and my understanding of myself as a creator, and more importantly, as more than just a creator, by working with Andrew. And so one of the reasons why I asked Andrew to join me today, and those of you who've been listening and watching know that this is only the second time I've had somebody else on the podcast. I am hoping to do more of that, but it's especially sort of relevant today because most of you will have just seen or heard my most recent podcasts, one of which has to do with what I'm calling the consciousness signature, which is the work that I do in my one-on-one courses. And we're going to explore Andrew's consciousness signature today. And we're also talking to those creators out there who have more of a 5D mindset and are working with more than just the 3D tools that everybody has. So there's a little bit of a why Andrew's here. And Andrew, if you don't mind, I'd love for you to just tell everybody who you are and what it is you do.
Sure. Yeah. As you mentioned, Dave, I'm the founder of 5-Star Creator System, and I was a software engineer for about 15 years. And after experiencing a toxic work culture at the last company that I worked, I decided, I'd always wanted to work for myself. I always wanted to build my own company. And I started to go to what I knew, the strengths that I had, which was coding. But I knew that wasn't going to be enough. In today's world, you need awareness, you need brand awareness. So I started to look into um, online content creation and took a few courses. And I realized this was something that I was very interested in and something I wanted to explore. And as I started to explore it, I started to see patterns in a lot of these big creators and how they were achieving these massive outcomes of 6, 7, 8 figures, how they were building these massive, almost media empires in a sense. And I had these 5 pillars that I outlined that I saw in common across all of them, which is the core 5 pillars of the 5-star creator. And through that time doing all that research, I actually had a profound spiritual experience that validated all of this for me. And the next morning I woke up and I got to work on building out the system. And I started to discover all of these different places at which someone could fall on this spectrum of what I call the 32 archetype system, and what is their strength and weakness, where they are, how they can benefit from filling in the gaps to get them to that next point in their journey. And I was experiencing it myself as I was uncovering it. I saw where I fell in the spectrum, and the places that I needed to grow personally. So yeah, it's been an interesting ride. I'll stop there, but we can talk more about it. Yeah, that's been my journey thus far.
That's great. It's no accident that the two of us sort of fell in together, because we have that same energetic sort of sixth sense going on, and you talking about having the awareness, coming into the awareness of the 32 different archetypes, all of which are just fascinating. I know when I did your believe it was a free online assessment that gave me my archetype, my creator archetype, it was right on target for me. And it's interesting that there are 32 of them, because as you know, I work with the 64 gene keys. And so it's exactly, and the 64 gene keys are also intended to represent universal archetypes. So it's no accident, I think, that we know each other and respect each other's work and really get a kick out of hanging out together. So yeah, so it must have been a very interesting and somewhat challenging experience for you to go from the corporate culture into your own thing. And so it's interesting to me to hear sort of the path that you took around studying these various creators, finding the sort of commonalities around them to build your 5 pillars. And what was that transition like for you from corporate world to doing your own thing? And are you particularly talking to other people who are trying to do that as well?
Yeah, that was a challenging transition. I think being someone who has tasks given to him and business needs sort of passed down from the top, you don't have to really think about what's the next move in the business. But when you're living that entrepreneur life, you have to always be thinking a few steps ahead. You have to always be figuring out what's going to move the needle for the business in a sense. And you have to be self-motivated. If you don't show up one day, the business doesn't progress. Whereas like if you're an employee and you're having an off day, you can kind of phone it in. But with a personal brand, you have to show up every day and you have to always be pushing it forward. So that's a big transition that I experienced personally. And yeah, I am speaking to those people. I've tried in a lot of my messaging to reach those people, and it's a big gap, I think, for a lot of people to cross. I think living in that 3D space, we have all of these responsibilities, all of these things that are calling us back to fear and scarcity and productivity. I think that's a term that gets kind of overused nowadays, is like productivity and efficiency. But I think a lot of times it is fear-based, and people are trying to essentially just earn more, have more, do more, make the most use of their time, because so many of us feel so overwhelmed nowadays with all of these different responsibilities. So it's a big gap for people to cross. You know, I'm trying to reach more and more people and make them aware of, like, stepping into the 5D space, how you can liberate yourself from these fears about money, how you can trust your creative spirit, and how you can follow what you really feel you're called to do here. Because I think there's a lot of people out there, myself in the past, who weren't really fulfilled. And it just would be a shame if we're spending our, majority of our lives working on tasks and things that really don't have much meaning for us. And I think the world will be a lot happier if we can empower more people. I know you're out here doing that, and I think that that's a really important work that we're doing. So, yeah, I am speaking to those people to answer your question.
Great. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because, we're all conditioned, is the word that I like to use, to believe in the 3D reality being the only one that there is. And that's actually just a way to keep us all in the scarcity, lack, survival, sort of fight or flight. The number of times when I was in the corporate world where I felt like, I was numbing myself from what it was I really knew I was here to do, and B, was constantly concerned that somebody was going to come in and turn my life upside down, and because I didn't really have a sense of power or control over what I was doing ultimately, right? So it's very, very interesting, though, that to me, that your part of your path was saying, if I'm not going to do the corporate work anymore, if I'm going to transition out of that and do my own thing, then this is the thing I want to do. And I'd be very interested to find out how it is that you came to the concept of helping creators, and if it was through the study of other creators that you had the realization that this is what you wanted to do, or if you started, which was first, the chicken or the egg, right? Was it the idea of, well, what I'd really love to do with my life is help people become free of their workplaces, and one way I can do that is help them to hone their skills as creators, because that's the way the world is going. If you're not going to be employed by a company, you're going to be employed by yourself. And in order to be an actual viable entity these days, you have to be out there creating. So was it what I'm trying to get to, I've got that question, which I think I'm not going to try to over explain because you get it. But then the other question, the other fascinating thing for me, and this has to do with your consciousness signature, is that you are really born to take something that's very complex, like how to be a creator on all of these different platforms and all of the things that are happening while AI is going on, and the rise of all of that, and turn it into something uniquely simple, so that the people who are aligned with the message that you have, like I am, can see how simple it is by just finding out what your creator archetype is, right? And seeing that you understand the gap between where I am now and where I'm trying to go, and that you, through the 5 pillars, can help me get there. So that might have been 7 or 8 questions, but take it away.
Sure, yeah. To start with, how I landed in the creator space. I remember years ago, I lived in Los Angeles, and I remember seeing billboards for YouTubers. And I thought to myself, I didn't really see the opportunity. I thought to myself, is that really like a viable path? Years later, I found myself learning from YouTubers, coding solutions, and just philosophy and life hacks, all those types of things that benefited me and improved my life overall. And I started to see that there was a lot of value in self-education through, online content. And when I started to decide to work for myself, and when I decided to go out there, I knew that I wanted to be creating that type of content around the business that I was building. So I started to take some courses. I took a writing boot camp, and I met a lot of other creators, and I realized that I kind of had found my tribe in a sense. I was just really inspired by seeing all of these people who were boldly and courageously saying that they wanted to create and they wanted to express themselves. They wanted to carve their own path in life, and they were willing to invest their time, their energy, their money, their location. A lot of these people were moving all over the world to try to pursue this passion that they felt they were called to. So it clicked for me, and that's what inspired me to start studying these different types of creators. I had early on this spiritual experience that I mentioned, but it was two spiritual experiences really. One of which was I gave my mother-in-law this book on spirituality that was very important to me. I have it actually right here. Just
Yay,
and I
feel
have it
free.
nearby. It's a book called Deep and Simple by Bo Lozoff. And he's a spiritual teacher he's since passed, but he wrote a lot about different wisdom texts and the connection between all of these different religions and philosophies, and how they're all speaking to the same core human experience, this spiritual beings that we are. And, she was at a tough time in her life. And I think by expressing that kindness and trying to help her, really unlock something for me, because I went to bed that night and I felt like I had experienced essentially a spiritual baptism in a sense. Like I had all of these spirits in the room. And actually, I should mention, I wasn't asleep, I know, because I woke up to go to the bathroom, and then I came back to bed. So and it was about 2:15, I think, in the morning. And I checked the clock. I looked at my phone, and I was laying there, and it all happened like within a few minutes. But I just felt this presence in the room, and it felt like I was graduating to some higher experience in life. Like I had found that I'm supposed to be someone who helps others more, is charitable. I kind of always felt like that was missing in my life. I knew I wanted to help people, but I couldn't. I never really wanted to like volunteer for charity events, and I always kind of felt bad about that. But this just clicks more for me. Being able to help people who are taking action and are sort of grabbing the life that they want, people who are ready to be creators, right, in their own lives, and guide those people. It feels more aligned for me. So during that experience, I felt like I had reached some new level or new plane. You probably know the words better than I do with all of your study. But the next day I woke up and I had the word spiritual entrepreneur pop into my head, and I didn't even really know what that meant. And I told Devin, my wife, I said, yeah, I don't know. The first word that popped in my head was spiritual entrepreneur. I'm not sure what that is. And, I spent the day kind of working on research, studying these different creators, and I kind of wasn't really sure what to make of it. But I went to bed that night, and again, about 2:15 in the morning, I had to get up. And when I came back to bed, like I had this visit from a spiritual being that had this nymph-like presence. It's kind of funny. I haven't talked about this in a while, but it's like this lavender light in the room. And I felt like it was kind of tapping me on the shoulder and kind of giving me these different ideas about this course and this system, and what this was going to be for people, and how I was going to help people become unblocked from their fears around money and scarcity and being controlled and essentially coerced into living lives that they feel miserable living. You know, it's not to say everyone doesn't have joys in their life. We all have the benefit of family and friends that, you know, that can carry us, even if we're not happy in our careers. But I think a career nowadays makes up a majority of our work, you know, our waking hours. And so I think allowing people to feel more self-expressed in that is going to unblock a lot of stifled energy as a species, as a you know, the human race, that we can live much happier as an overall species. And so and more in harmony with nature, and the world that we're a part of, the universe that we're a part of, because we are, in my belief, all one being. We're not separate. And so um, I had, just for, you know, like probably over an hour, just these thoughts, and I was writing them all down on my phone. And that's another way I know I was awake, is because I actually was writing things down on my phone when this was happening, and I kept experiencing these full body chills or tingles, like whenever these thoughts kept popping up in my head. And I was kind of having essentially like a dialogue with this being, and so I I didn't want it to like end, but eventually it kind of just like it was over, and I went to sleep, and I woke up the next morning, and I was telling my wife about it, and I actually wrote about it. It was one of the first blog posts I wrote. It's called "How I Became a Spiritual Entrepreneur," and it's on my blog, so you can find it there on my website. But we can, I guess, add a link to it here.
Yeah, absolutely. Look in the show notes.
Yeah. So anyway, it was a wild ride. I kind of woke up the next morning, and my mind was blown. I was kind of just not really sure what this all meant. I had had spiritual experiences in the past throughout my life, but they've been, you know, years apart. And so this was the most powerful, and this felt like the biggest calling. And the reason I believe it was the most powerful is because it was bigger than myself.
Mhm.
My mission in all of this has been to empower others, and seeing people like you, seeing other students have these positive results and impact people positively in their own creation is reinforcement, and it just keeps me energized and excited for what's next. And um, you know, that's what led me to all of this. And I've just been creating content lately around the course and trying to build awareness for it and make people understand what's available to them, this abundance that is available through the course, through creation online. And so that's really been what I've been trying to do, is improve my skills as a creator to grow in sales and marketing and visibility. That's been the biggest challenge, visibility, I think, as an authentic creator, someone who's speaking from a place that is more profound and deeper than the average internet content. It can be challenging. And, you know, I'm someone who always like prides myself on truth telling and authenticity. And so I I'm not buying followers, I'm not advertising, and
Right,
it's challenging to grow your reach. You know, there's a lot of people out there who are, I think, buying followers, and you know, that's fine. That's their right to do. There's nothing illegal or, you know, immoral about it. But you know, I want people to know that I'm able to deliver for them by doing it myself,
right.
and you know, doing it in a way that is above board. And so, you know, it's going to take longer, but I think that's okay with me. I'm fine with that. I think, you know, I see that with you. I see you building day by day, and it's just it is compounding though. I see the traction. I know you mentioned to me this morning, I think, in a message, how you had doubled your YouTube followers in a week. And so,
Right.
you know, it does compound, and you just have to trust that your message will reach people. And you know, if you're living your truth in a sense.
Well, and the important thing is that reach is reaching the right people. You know, it's one thing to have 100,000 followers. I don't, but um, it, if only 10 of those are really the right followers, then it's the same thing as having 200 followers, and those same 10 are part of that group, right? It's and it's one of the confounding dilemmas of being a creator, because there is power in those numbers, in that they give you, for somebody who is looking at them, they give you a sense of social proof, right? He knows what he's talking about because so many people are following him, or there are so many comments, or whatever it is. The work that I do says that when you show up as who you actually are through this consciousness signature, and you're working on building and activating the legacy you are here to leave, then the right people are going to show up. And that's how you make the highest impact. And your story is so powerful, because talking about you getting connected with other creators as a way of first exploring what it would be like to hone your own skills, and then finding such inspiration from that group. And now you're the person out there who people are finding and being inspired by, just like that the people in that group were inspiring you. And that, once again, connects very closely with your consciousness signature, because you have centered groundedness when you are um, building deep connections. It's about building deep connections for you. And there's a sort of a cycle or a learning circle that goes on for you, which is you build these connections, and then you take the connections back into a place of solitude and use them to broaden what you're able to bring to the world, right? So it's a sort of this beautiful synchronicity, or there's another word which means two people working together, and I can't think of what that is right now, but symbiosis. It's this beautiful symbiosis that where you make these deep connections and have a powerful impact on somebody like me, and then that impact reflects back to you, and you're able to take that and empower your work more, so that you can reach more people and empower them as well. So it's fun to have this conversation with you, where you're talking about what it is you do, and because I know about your consciousness signature, I'm able to say, yep, that, Mr. Andrew, he is here to simplify the complex and to make these deep connections, to then go back and be in a place of reflective solitude, which is how I interpret these spiritual experiences that you were talking about. That yes, there were other entities there with you, but it was all in order to support you connecting more deeply with what is actually going on with you, right? So that you can then create this very powerful but easy to understand and incredibly empowering to your clients system to simplify this very complex but very needed thing. And especially in a world where today there's so much chaos, there's so much noise, there's so many people competing for attention. And those of us who are giving their attention, there's multiple ways to do that, but for me, it comes down to two ways. One is giving intentional attention, and the other way is just sort of wildly spending your attention account on whatever's out there. So I'm very selective about what I consume, both physically and also electronically, and in terms of the communications, and when there's so much coming at us, just having the ability to rely on our own authority as creators and be still in ourselves in order to get our truth out. That is one of the biggest gifts that your work has given me, is the ability to say, what I'm saying, it is not for everyone, but I can't dilute what it is I'm trying to say in order to make it palatable for everyone, because that just means playing to the masses in a way that people who aren't intentional about giving their attention can find me. And I want those people who are intentional, and they're intentionally giving their attention to what it is that I'm talking about and what you're talking about. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't have it all figured out, and I get called back to that 3D space all the time. It's, we are here and now physical beings. We have real physical world concerns. So we get, I think, pulled back and forth. It's, I think when we hear someone talk about like living in that space all the time, I think we know that that's not necessarily what we're here to do. You
Yeah.
know, we didn't come down to earth to just live in our 5D mind and live in a non-physical realm.
Yeah.
So there's work to do here, and I think it's can be challenging to find that balance. But that's what I've been trying to do, and I'm still learning. You said symbiotic relationship. I get inspired by you. I see what you're doing, and I see how you've taken the ideas I've shared with you and run with them and taken them further, and it inspires me. And it is that symbiotic relationship that, as creators, when you find people who are purpose driven and seeking meaning in what they do, it's different. It just lands differently with you. And so I feel honored to have crossed paths with you and to now call you a friend. And I think this has been a huge part of my journey as a creator, is getting to know you. And so it's a mutually beneficial relationship, definitely symbiotic.
Well, and mutually beneficial, I think, is one of the biggest keys here, because it's possible for anybody to make that choice, that what they want to do is make the world better, and to make the realization that they're not giving up anything. In fact, they're gaining so much by giving of themselves. It's not the win-lose game, the zero-sum game that we were all taught that it was going to be.
Yeah.
And, for you to be successful doesn't mean that I am going to be less successful. There's enough to go around. It is an abundant universe. And the more people can find trust in that place inside themselves, and trust that the universe and universal intelligence has their back, and they're able to trust that and have faith in that over their fears that the 3D world pulls us into, which, yes, we're all living in, you and I are living in both all the time. I don't know of anybody who's living in 5D all the time, or else they would just disappear probably. But we all do have those material world concerns, and there are choices we make to take care of those material world concerns, and you can choose to do it in the system that we were all taught is the only way, and that's fine, and that works for tons and tons of people. But if you're feeling something more, if you're feeling the pull to be generative and have these supportive relationships and get support back, this is the time, while the world seems to be falling apart, that we need you more than ever to step up and do whatever it is you're called to do, which is, of course, the work that I work with. And your consciousness signature, which is something I've really kind of been harping on for the last week or two, because I want people to understand what that is, that it's simply, and that it's available to everyone. It's just simply this bridge inside you that's already there to take you from the reality that you're living in now to the sort of identity that you would embody in order to have the reality that you want. And that's exactly the story that you're telling, is that you were living in a toxic work environment. You needed to make changes, and you decided to make those changes, and you had help from these experiences. But it started with you helping someone else. It started with you gifting that book, right? And so we never know what the initial generative moment is going to be for unlocking our own soul's purpose. But that bridge is there, that consciousness signature is in there inside everyone. The work that I've spent decades doing is studying different transformational technologies, and the work of people like Abraham Maslow and David R. Hawkins' map of consciousness, and the Gene Keys with Richard Rudd, and human design, and a lot of other things over the many, many, many years I've been delving into all of this in order to try to find my own path. What I found is that we all have a path inside of us. And so you had said that you would be comfortable with me talking a little bit more about what I found out when I looked at your information. So I want to dive into that a little bit more if you're good with that still.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm all ears. I want to hear. Let's
Well,
do it.
so like I said, this is a combination of a lot of different types of work. So people who are familiar with human design will know that the human design system divides us into 5 different energy types, and those energy types have a large influence on what we're here to do in the world and how we're here to do it. You and I actually share the same energy type, and that energy type is called projector. And it's about 20% of the world's population. And what projectors are here to do is to guide. So we're definitely here to understand something so well that we can guide other people in doing it for themselves. Projectors all do that in different ways, because the projector energy type is just sort of the top layer of who we are. There are many, many other things around this work, including how you're meant to make decisions, and how it is you move through the world. So we talked a little bit about how you move through the world already, with your going inward once you've collected knowledge or been inspired by others, and then coming back to make those deeper connections with people through what you're here to teach. So it's that beautiful sort of life cycle of generation where you are gifting to others, and you are learning through that process, and they're gifting back to you. So that's very different from how I'm here to operate. The way I'm here to operate is as a guide, but I do it through deep detailed study of whatever it is that I am interested in, and then experimenting on myself, going out and trying and failing and seeing, okay, does this thing work, or is this thing going to work for somebody else? And it worked for me. Can I help somebody else with it? Whereas you have this natural ability to just be with other people, get the learning through the giving, and bring it back into solitude to then process into whatever it is you're doing. So even though we are both guides, we manifest that guidance for ourselves and our processes differently. Similarly, around decision making, I'm somebody who makes decisions by talking it out. And that's why I can spend 15 hours on a podcast, because I just will have so much inside me that I'm ready to talk out, because I don't know who I am or what I know without talking to somebody. So this is a delightful experience for me. Your decision making comes from a gut feeling. You have a gut yes or a gut no, and you know it in the moment, and it might be very fleeting, but you either know or don't know, period. And so it's very interesting once we get to know these different aspects of the consciousness signature, how we can look back at our lives and say, you know what, I really had a gut feeling was the wrong thing to do, but I did it anyway. Maybe I need to pay more attention to that spark when I feel it, right? And this is really all that I'm doing, is helping pull these various aspects of who we are energetically through basically information about when we were born, um, so that we can become more aligned with that, accept ourselves more, understand ourselves more, and then eventually get to a place where we can really appreciate ourselves. Because it's at that point where we realize that that thing that has weighed us down all our lives is actually a doorway into some kind of a strength that we have that we can appreciate. So, for example, for you, something like that might be the complexity to simplicity gateway that you have, which is, there may have been a time where you were thinking, in fact, you said that when you were first seeing those billboards in LA and you were seeing that it might be possible to make a living as a YouTuber, that that kind of felt out of reach. And that what might have felt out of reach about it was, how do I even begin to start to figure out how to do that? Right. So there's a sense of, it's really very, very complex. And that means I have to either, in my brain, I'm going to either overcomplicate it to make it so complicated that it's not possible for me, or I'm going to oversimplify it and say, oh, well, if I can figure out how to do this, anybody can, so therefore it's not for me, right? So those might be some of the reactions that you might have had anytime that you've come up against something that you felt called to, but you resisted. And in the way that your consciousness signature is put together, you tend to draw people to you who have those same kinds of responses to becoming a creator. Like, that might be a way for you to magnify your messaging and magnetize your particular group by saying, I see you, I've been there, I know. You're either making this more complicated than you need to, or you're thinking that if that idiot over there can do it and have 100,000 followers, then anybody can do it, and therefore why should I even? It's not for me. But what you have done through that is you move through that challenge and turn it into the strength of, let's make it simple for you, but let's make it simple for you in a way that allows you to show up authentically. And you're not the person who had to struggle to get your message out there, and you're not the idiot who is standing on his head on YouTube to get 100,000 followers, right? You have something substantial to say. You have something that's going to impact the world. And this is exactly the work that you did with me to help unlock higher levels of my own abilities, to help me see that I wasn't here to struggle to get somebody to pay $297 for something. I was here to see myself as a leader for well-resourced people who are looking for something deeper and looking to make a bigger impact and leave a legacy beyond a financial legacy. And you didn't know that that was what was inside me, but you immediately saw that there was something there. And you have a way, through the work that you do with the 5-star creator system, of allowing that part of me, and that part of any of your students or clients who come to you already feeling this sense of mission, to really embody that and do that from an intentional place. Do that knowing, without all of the trial and error, right? So my part of my thing is, I'll just get out there and do anything just to see if it works. And you are able to take that and take that energy and focus it for me, so that I leaped over other people who were at the same place as I was, and was able to get there so much faster, because you helped me understand the importance of standing in my own truth and having authority and developing my brand voice and personality and how to use that. So all of that is to say that this is exactly who you are designed to be and how you're designed to help. And as we talked about before this call, you also have this unique ability to very simply and clearly explain something. So that's the other reason why people would be drawn to you from your consciousness signature. You're here as sort of the great simplifier, the great explainer. And like I have said to you before, I could have learned the same strategies and techniques for being a creator from somebody else, but it was the ability for you to explain that sort of to my soul that then allowed me to go further. And these are just the strengths and the gifts that you have that you're really here to embody, and that has been my experience of you. And that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to have you on the podcast today, is because people need to know that just like you can choose where you give your attention, you can also be intentional about who you choose to work with in your own path as you move towards whatever's next for you. And if moving towards whatever is next for you includes becoming a creator, Andrew is the guy. I'm just here to say that.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's a glowing review from someone who I respect and admire in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, that's that symbiotic relationship that we're, hearing you say that just fuels me on this mission, and gives me a new burst of energy to take on whatever's next on my path and whoever I cross paths with. So, yeah, thank you for saying that, Dave. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're very, very welcome. And speaking of crossing paths with people, how can people find you?
You can find me on my website, andrewhenderson.me. That's where I have a lot of my writing. And then you can find me on 5starcreator.com. That's with the number 5. And you'll find a lot of information about the course, the archetypes, the different lessons. There's opportunity to get some free lessons on there as well. And I encourage everyone to take the archetype assessment, whether you're somebody who's just starting out, or you're somebody who's been doing this for years. There's a place for you on that archetype scale. So just take it today. It's fun. It only takes a few minutes.
Yeah, and I really want to double down on that invitation that you just made to take the archetype assessment, because it's eye-opening and it's right on target. And for anybody who's hearing this who has ever thought about how do I get started as a creator, this is how you get started. So just go to 5starcreator.com. All of the links will be in the show notes, and get started with Andrew. You could not be in better hands. And as you've heard on our podcast today, the story that he tells is inspiring and very different from how anybody else does the work that he does. And therefore, the results are very different. So thank you again, Andrew. I'm really honored that you came onto the podcast today.
Yeah, I'm honored to be here. Thanks for having me, Dave.
Absolutely. Is there anything else that you want to share with anyone before we sign off, or do you feel like we've handled it all?
I wanted to ask if you remember your archetype. Do you remember which one you got?
I would need to look it up again, but if you say it, it will come right back to me.
You got the inventive spirit, which you were the only one who's taken it so far that has gotten the inventive spirit.
Wow. Well, it was right on target for me. Can you explain what the inventive spirit is?
Yeah. So of the 5 pillars, and being authority, high value free content, visibility, persuasive sales is number 4, and number 5 is transformative products. The inventive spirit has proficiency in content and products. So I'll read the description here. The inventive spirit is a creator who has mastered content creation and transformative products. They are highly creative, often coming up with unique ideas and innovative solutions that resonate deeply with their audience. Inventive spirits are excellent at building products that offer real value, and they have the ability to craft content that is meaningful and impactful. However, despite their creativity and product skills, they often struggle with gaining visibility and promoting their offers effectively. This limits their reach and their ability to turn their creativity into a profitable business. Um, um, does it still resonate for you? Does that
It's
remind you of where you were at when you took the assessment?
it's absolutely right on target for where I was at when I took the assessment. And that's the other thing, is the assessment is more than just, as you all just heard, it's more than just some kind of a surface archetype. It goes deep and it will resonate for you, because I found that so personally validating when I got that response. I was like, this guy knows what he's doing. And like, if you already know, if there's somebody out there, if there's this Andrew Henderson 5starcreator.com guy out there, and you get that information back and you feel really validated, that's all you need to know in order to start doing the work, because then you know you're going to be taken care of in a very customized way that is specific to what your needs are. It's not generic work. It is life-changing, business-changing work that speaks to the soul. So that's very true for me.
Yeah, there's no one size fits all for this journey. Like you said, for projectors, right? Like, we all have our different ways as creators on how we're going to reach our audience, how we're going to share that information, and how we're going to grow. And I think that was what frustrated me when I first came into the space, was most of the content, most of the systems out there were one size fits all. And it didn't all work for me. And I knew it wouldn't all work for other people as well. So I created a system that you could find your unique path based on your strengths and weaknesses. And, I think when you took the assessment, we got to work on those weakness areas, and you filled them, and look at how far you've come. I mean, you have a business now, you have clients, you have visibility, you're growing week after week, and stepped into your authoritative voice, and it's all coming together for you. You're on trajectory. And I bet now, if you took the assessment, you would get a much different result.
Very interesting. I might have to give that a try.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, gosh, it was something that it's that we're kind of on the same path here, Andrew, in terms of how we work with people, because you're finding the way to unlock the specific strengths and gaps for people that they need in order to become a creator. And I do the same thing in my work with people for them to leave a legacy. So it's complementary work, and it's interesting to me to have yet another conversation with you where we find out that we're ultimately kind of doing the same thing, just from different points of view. So
Yeah.
I love it, and I really
I,
appreciate and am very thankful for you.
yeah, same. And I do want to say, I think people can do both. Like you said,
Oh yeah,
it's, you show people how to step into their destiny based on their gene keys, and what they're meant to be doing here, sort of a spiritual purpose. And I created the 5-star system to help people have the tools to achieve that. And so I think there's a lot of overlap and opportunity, like, between our courses. I think plenty of people I have told about you, and to be aware of their gene keys. There's a lot of people who are interested in the subject matter, and discovering what their purpose is. So keep doing what you're doing.
absolutely. And we'll just keep that symbiotic relationship going, and we'll see where we wind up, right?
Yeah.
All right, sir. So everybody, double check the show notes, get all the links, and thanks for coming back to the Gentle Mastery Podcast. We'll see you all later. Peace. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Gentle Mastery Podcast. If something stirred in you today, trust it. That's the beginning of unlayering. To explore more or work together one-on-one, visit gentlemasterymethod.com. And if this episode spoke to you, share it with someone else who's ready to activate their legacy from the inside out. Until next time, remember, legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you activate within yourself right now.